And we're now live. It's Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. For those of you watching this post live, welcome to today's podcast on the AI stack is becoming the power stack. We'll just wait for a little bit, let people roll in, probably wait for about 2 minutes, and then we'll kick everything off for today. But otherwise, if you like, you can do the scan me on the right, throw a couple of bucks our way, that'd be great. Or if you're interested in sponsoring the event, the podcast, please let us know. You can send me an email at lewisfarrell@gmail.com or just DM me on Twitter. For the time being, sit back, relax, grab a coffee, grab some water, and we'll just chat amongst ourselves until we start in about a minute and a bit. Yeah.
You decided to build yourself an AI machine yet?
Not yet. I've been watching, there was a story that came out about a week ago that the Mac Studio might be delayed to August, which would make me cry.
It is.
And also because of the memory issues, we're hoping it might go from 512 gigabyte to a terabyte. That might not occur just because of all the memory getting sucked up. I mean, there's stories of Apple pulling product because either there's a threshold point of number of sales versus, hey, we can really use that memory in these machines over here. So it's impacting consumer retail PCs and stuff. How about you?
So I'm lucky that I have a bunch of pretty crazy machines. I have the Mac Studio M1 Ultra. I have a 2019 Mac Pro Tower.
Wow.
And I've got, it's an old Mac trash can as well. But the Tower is really unique because it's old, but it's got 1.5 terabytes of RAM in it.
Wow.
But can't really use that RAM for AI.
Oh.
But it also has 4 GPUs.
Oh.
At 128 gigabytes of VRAM.
Oh.
But they don't communicate with each other super well.
Oh.
So I can run an array of models on that really, really fast and pretty powerfully, but not necessarily massive models. Like I got bored and I loaded Kimi onto it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can run Kimi.
Wow.
Sure. It runs, but the prompt processing is about 10 tokens per second. So
yeah.
A 10,000, token, whatever prompt can take 30 minutes to get going. So, I really want a new Ultra for sure. A new Studio would be great.
Sure.
But, yeah.
All right, let's kick this off. I'm going to change it just to me for the second. As I said, welcome everyone. It's Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. Welcome to today's podcast on the AI stack is becoming a power stack. And what do we mean by that? Well, AI is starting to feel less like a tool we are choosing and more like an operating environment everyone here is kind of being moved into. Sometimes, I guess, before we need to understand who controls it, who benefits it, who carries the risk when it fails. I guess from my perspective, this week's deeper story is that AI power is moving out of the demo layer and into the systems layer. The companies that own the stack, the communities absorbing the infrastructure, the agents beginning to act, and our workplaces are being repriced around speed. That's why the AI stack is becoming a power stack. It's not just a technology headline. This week is a story about control. It's a trust story, and it's a very human story about who gets leverage and who gets exposed. So what happens when AI stops being something we use and becomes the system that decides who gets speed, who gets access, who gets squeezed, and who loses control? This week, the real AI stories are not about another model launch. It's that the AI stack is turning into a power stack, and the power is moving closer to the systems that people depend on every day. I mean, when CNBC says Alphabet's 160% rally in a year reflects the value of owning most of the stack in AI, the point is not just about their market cap. It's that owning the stack now means who's controlling pricing, access, distribution, dependency, and leverage. Then we have Politico reporting a data center drained 30 million gallons of water unnoticed, which blows my mind, until residents finally complained about low water pressure. So here, the AI story, stops feeling abstract and starts showing up in someone's town, someone's utility bill, and someone's trust in local decision makers. Then from Forbes, we hear that Visa cards for AI agents. Visa and Inflow are now enabling agentic payments. And the issue is no longer whether AI can answer a question, it's whether we're ready for AI systems that can spend, act, remember, and move through workflows with real authority. And when Yahoo Finance reports Goldman Sachs tech boss says tracking individual AI usage isn't useful, he just watches how fast his 12,000 engineers move from idea to production. This workplace story becomes much bigger than adoption. It becomes a question of who can compress execution time, who gets displaced by that compression, and who understands the new rules before they're forced to live under them. The new and very dominant enterprise metric I'm now seeing is speed to outcome. It says the real AI advantage may not be headcount reduction, it may be execution compression. So today's conversation is really about one overall large and uncomfortable shift. And that's AI moving from capability into control. And the fight is no longer just over smarter tools, it's over who owns and controls the infrastructure, agents, incentives, and operating systems that will quietly reshape how power moves through companies, communities, and people's lives. In today's episode, we'll cover this shift across 4 areas: who owns the stack, who controls the infrastructure, who governs the agent, and who actually turns AI into measurable execution. So let's start there, because I think the real question is not whether AI gets more powerful. The real question is who gets to control the power stack and who gets controlled by it. So, Achilles, what are your thoughts on the whole thing? Welcome back from taking care of family and doing good things. Welcome back. How are things going? And how do you? What's your view on stack owners becoming power brokers?
I think we're already seeing it, right? We're already seeing it to a huge extent with, I think about NVIDIA a lot, and just how much more powerful they've become because of the AI rush. One thing that was said a few weeks ago that has kind of been in the back of my head was Peter Thiel, the owner of Palantir, said, if we are becoming this powerful and we're becoming this necessary to the functioning of society, what's to stop governments from just nationalizing us? And then I tied that in my head into something that you had said, which was sovereign AI for nations, right? So I think this is more a battle of what company can have the most global influence, and the parent companies are pushing that very hard. Like China's subsidizing all of their chip manufacturers. They're doing everything they possibly can to get in this NVIDIA level game because it doesn't necessarily just control China or China's ability. It controls China's influence now. And I think that's the one place where the United States actually still has a pretty good leg up in the AI game right now.
Yeah, I think I talk about the infrastructure points. They're almost choke points, which may matter more than the companies with the flashiest models and demos. The headlines were popping through on this. So out of Fortune, AI wins have Alphabet poised to become the world's biggest company, with that 60% rally they got, boosting them out. NVIDIA's already committed $40 billion to equity AI deals, in addition to everything else they're doing. So trying to fund the whole thing. Then we've got Benzinga. We mentioned that their CEO says OpenAI and Meta are working on AI wearables that could replace smartphones. I think that might be a pushback because, we've been hearing about the Apple glasses, for so long now. And yet there's already been Meta's glasses, and I think Samsung's got some, and the Chinese are doing some as well. I think if they do that well enough, the iPhone may disappear at some point because, if you can just do gestures and you're seeing stuff in front of you, then the devices start to go away. But then we've heard, from OpenAI that they're going to come out with their own, mobile phone, AI operating system type phone. How that's going to be working is interesting. Maybe there's no apps. It's all, you just tell it and it does stuff. I don't know.
I don't know myself. I thought that I would be interacting with my devices by voice a lot more than I currently am. And the only time I talk to my phone by voice is when I'm too busy to type. Now, maybe that's because of just like the generation that I'm a part of, and I grew up texting, right? Maybe, well, think about it actually. I have a dedicated device in my house, Alexa, that I only use by voice. So I guess it's about like, what more benefit does it offer me? If you can give me GPS instructions overlaid on my car's windshield because I'm wearing sunglasses, cool. Yeah, that'll probably get me there. But otherwise, my iPhone does a fine job. And I think this is what we're running into, Lewis, is just because we can, do we want to? And we're running into this with AI to a huge extent. It's like AI is this hammer, right? And now they're like, oh my God, now the hammer can move at 50,000 RPM. And everyone's like, cool, but like 3,000 was fine. For most of our use cases, we don't need this outlandish system that everyone seems to be pushing on us.
And maybe it is generational, because I mean, I've got Alexa as well, but I just use it for, what's the weather and other stuff around that. I don't use it as a work tool.
No,
I use it as a tell me the status of certain things around my environment. Whereas for my machine, and maybe it is generational, I find typing allows me to structure my thoughts better than speaking at this time.
Well,
I don't. Maybe that's just a generational thing because we're so used. We've all come up on typing stuff, right? But if kids if everything is verbal, maybe that'll shift. I don't know. I think it's interesting that we're seeing these other companies trying to come out with devices and coming out with equity and just pumping the market as much as they can. I mean, the other theme around this is infrastructure is now a public constraint, not a private build out, and so we're seeing limits, and we've seen it much more publicly in the last 2 weeks, around water and electricity and communities rebelling and communities protesting. Even here in Salt Lake City, Utah, the guy from Shark Tank wants to put in, it's interesting. The story came up. They thought it was 20,000 square feet, and no, he wants 20,000. I mean, he wants acres. I mean, it's just insane how much space they want for this thing here. So we're starting to see very public pushback on the whole. Let's just throw data centers everywhere. And that's exploding as well. And now a bunch of stories in the last 7 days around home data centers, right? Maybe they'll pay you to set up, in your closet, a data center, and it's hooked to the Google Fiber or Comcast Fiber or whatever it is. So it acts as a virtual set of data centers. You know what I mean? So we're seeing all those being thrown up as well. But certainly infrastructure is getting some pushback in a lot of areas.
I think Orbital is going to be huge for that reason. I didn't understand why everyone was so excited about orbital data centers, and it's because the permissions are a totally different game. I think SpaceX is going to be huge for that. I think we're going to be launching like a lot of orbital data centers because you're already seeing entire communities just say no, like you can't do this. What's even worse is you're seeing communities say no and then still get built. Did you see that article last week?
Yeah. They protested and said no, and then it got approved anyway.
It did. The developer sued, is what happened, and then the state came in and said, "This community has to allow it here." The community itself vetoed it, shut it down, whole nine yards. It was the state that superseded the community.
Wow,
it's like that's going to be hard.
Now, interesting story that popped up: Anthropic grew 80-fold in a single quarter. Now it's renting Elon Musk's data center in order to cope. Now that's an interesting story because it means that Elon Musk with XAI doesn't have enough usage that he can afford to rent it out to Anthropic. And that was an interesting story that popped up that, I guess it's just an interesting data point that he's struggling to try and get usage. And so he has to rent it out.
I think there's a few things there, right? First off, the way Elon does things is he just mixes everything with all other things. So in order to get XAI, I had to go through X and I had to do this thing and that was annoying, so I didn't do it. But also, I think we really underestimate the value of neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
Elon was vocally, my AI is being trained in this other way, right? When I'm certain other models or other companies are pushing their AIs for certain political leanings or beliefs or whatnot, but he was vocal about it. And I think that turned off a lot of people, even the people that supported those political beliefs, because I want my beliefs to be right because they stand onto themselves, not because something is trained to tell me that they're right or trained to pull information in that. And I read an article about that, and I was like, you know what? That's huge. Like Grok, I was shocked the first time I used Grok. It's a great model. It was snappier, faster. It had awesome text input, and I just kind of wasn't interested in it. It's in my Tesla, but other than that, I didn't use it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Also, stories popping on the cost, right? So they found that one company found it was cheaper to bring in a junior programmer, coder, to do work than to pay for the AI, because the AI, the cost of the tokens and everything was more. And then there was a story that popped up in the last 7 days. NVIDIA's own AI costs now dwarf what it pays human employees, the VP at NVIDIA admits, as compute bills spiral across the industry. And so NVIDIA's VP, Brian Catanzaro, says that for his team, the cost of AI compute is far beyond the costs of typical human employees. And AI infrastructure is a lot of money. NVIDIA is constantly investing, blah, blah, blah. But it's not just NVIDIA that's witnessing the AI costs well, because of beyond the cost of employees. Axios is reporting Uber, Swan AI, and many other firms have seen a sharp rise in their AI costs, with worldwide total IT spending expected to reach, get this, 6.31 trillion in 2026, up 13.5% versus last year.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. We've been saying it doesn't make economic sense for a long time, right?
Right.
To go local.
Yeah, I mean, it's been this enterprise FOMO. Oh, AI, it's the new bright, shiny thing. We need to get it in. And then they get it in, and their costs are like huge. And they're going, maybe humans are better.
I think there's going to be systems that learn to rely on this in ways that we currently just don't have. So something new has to emerge, right? We see China's global AI, kind of like watching its citizens and doing things like that. That creates a use case, I think, for the amount of infrastructure we're building in. I think moving into space and doing things in orbit. Have you ever seen the trash maps that float around?
No.
Oh, Lewis, it's astounding how much, like, you can't just launch a spaceship. That's what I thought. I figured space is huge. You can just launch something up and you're fine. There are, not just like tracked rocks in orbit and those things, but like just satellite debris.
Yeah.
It's a really, really data intensive process. And I think, we'll have huge use cases for that. There'll be bigger use cases than we can imagine right now as well. Like, we're only going to create more data exponentially, not less.
Well, here's the weird thing. Gartner is estimating AI infrastructure is adding $401 billion in new spending this year alone. But real world audits, are telling a totally different story. Average GPU utilization in the enterprise is stuck at 5%. 5%. So that makes, idle GPUs nearly impossible to release. It's like this weird story that massive investment, we need data centers, we're going to throw them into space, we've got to do all this stuff. Meanwhile, the actual utilization is only around 5%. And so
I love you.
Are we waiting for backfilling for everything to kind of rush in, and then, eventually we'll start to use all this capacity? But an infrastructure stack that sits idle 95% of the time, the cost per useful token becomes a real line item emergency,
Lewis, I don't know. I didn't know anything about that until you just said it, but I rent B200s, the big chips, to train my local models once a month for a few hours, right?
Okay.
And I never thought this was within reach to me. It's $3.49 an hour, and I need my model for 3 hours roughly. So it costs me $10 a month to train my model.
Wow.
Custom. And there's always B200s available, and they're always asking, like, do you want to rent 4 of them? Do you want to? We'll give you a deal on this. And I'm like, So I'm hoping all these things eventually come down to the consumer market.
Yeah, you would hope that something starts to flow back, and then we're seeing data center blowing out on construction, land, labor, transformers, and permitting. Are all getting more expensive at once. So a data center went from a $7 billion price tag to now $16 billion. and apparently that's no exception. Even Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, said, if you're a blue collar worker in the trades, this is your time. You need to get on this. I have a brother-in-law who's in the electrical trade. It's like this is a prime time for anyone in blue collar work doing electricity, construction, plumbing, anything like that, because they're building everywhere. And they're spending so much money on it. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, again, my area, you can see 3 data centers from one point of view on just a normal street, like 1, 2, 3, and they're all multiple football field sizes.
Apparently, one of the biggest bottlenecks is electrical transformers. According to a report from Wood Mackenzie titled "Untangling the U.S. Transformer Supply Chain Crisis," power transformer demand has risen 116%. While distribution transfer demand is up 41%, the resulting supply shortage reached 30% for power transformers and 10% for distribution transformers in 2025, which translates directly into delays and increased costs. And labor and permitting are also adding to the squeeze. Apparently, the construction industry is facing a shortage of 439,000 workers as of November 2025. Most in skilled positions such as electricians, pipe layers, and data center construction jobs now pay up to 30% more than typical construction jobs, a premium obviously reflecting the competition for specialized labor. And if you look in order to do one campus, right? So DataBank's Red Oak campus will require 4,000 to 5,000 workers by early 2026 for one. I mean, it's just nuts what we're seeing in the construction trade with all this other stuff. I mean, the infrastructure story really explains, why the whole stack ownership is becoming so valuable, because it connects labor and execution with high compute costs, and it really changes how organizations are really measuring productivity because you've got all this other stuff coming behind you. It's just crazy the amount of costs and money pouring into this whole thing.
Hopefully it helps us boom and, like a rising tide raises all ships kind of thing.
Raises all ships. I mean, the other theme for this week is on AI agents becoming the execution layer, right? So we're not just asking questions or, with ChatGPT, they're now doing stuff and they have a credit card, apparently.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And the control problem, it is moving inside the stack. I mean, AI agents are moving beyond chat into memory, orchestration, payments, cybersecurity, real-time voice, finance, recruiting, enterprise workflows, and edge actions. Once agents have memory and payments and permissions, they become operational actors inside the enterprise, and they're no longer just helpful assistants. They're starting to become part of the company's execution infrastructure, which really creates a new layer of execution inside the enterprise. The headlines we're seeing show the control problem clearly. Agents can delete emails. They can make payments, rightly or wrongly. They own memory and suck it up. They also basically run on CPUs, so that's driving CPUs up the wall. And they're displaying blackmail in tests when they're doing testing. They're blackmailing the people trying to run it, and obviously challenging the rules organizations are currently run on. So, a chatbot answers, but an agent is acting. And I think that's why the control problem really matters a lot.
I agree. I think alignment's the same type of difficulty we've had since day one, right?
Yeah.
And people shouldn't be just handing over their hard drives to these machines sort of willy-nilly, because we're just promising a magic box, right?
Right.
And it is, but it really requires a good handler to get that. I think one of the things I agree with you most of is that AIs are going to be the agentic execution layer. We've been working towards that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
My Alexa pops up and it goes, "Hey, I noticed you ran out of this stuff. Probably this is usually about the time you order it. Do you want me to add it to your cart?" And I go, "Yeah, sure." And now I just have to go to Amazon. Removing that final step it makes sense. And I want to think about what I need for groceries. Why do I want to think about? Agents can handle all of that really, really well. I still haven't given an agent access to my emails. I probably should, but I have this archaic system in my head that I've been using for so long that the offloading time for that agent is probably not worth it for me. But eventually, why would you ever have an email inbox? We'll just tell you, hey, so-and-so is communicating with you. And you go.
Well, when you give it access to your refrigerator and your cupboards with your food, right? And that may not happen until we get humanoid robots to come in. And there's a bunch of stories around the humanoid robots blowing out last 2 weeks. In California, someone put an order in for 10,000. We're seeing in China, obviously, humanoid robots go into the home faster than we're seeing anywhere else. But I think on the agent side, the opportunity or risk for anyone watching today, I think founders should build agent systems with boundaries from day one. I think that's obvious. Executives should map where agents have authority, where they have data access, where they have spending ability, and where they need memory, because you've got to invest in that. Investors should probably watch companies building orchestration, also evaluation of agents and how you measure that. Audit trails, got to have audit trails. And then obviously agent governance, because they are becoming a real enterprise execution layer. And like you said, you just can't kind of throw this thing at the wall and step back and go, okay, my job's done.
Right.
You have to do this with some level of conscious thought.
But then the question remains, so how I see it, Lewis, it's more so, do you have those self-checkouts where you are?
Yeah.
In the store? There's one lady and she's watching 6 self-checkouts.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not that it's no longer one teller per checkout. Now it's one teller per 6 and monitoring, but we still can't just say, go to town, man. Have fun, AI.
Yeah, not like there was the Amazon store where that was all based on RFIDs, right? So you could basically, put everything in your thing and then you pushed it out through the door and it scanned all the tags and went, bang, here's your bill, and automatically billed you. That didn't take off.
Yeah, we had one of those. That was super weird.
Yeah. So maybe it was too far ahead of its time to see that. I don't know. But definitely the story from Forbes about Visa cards for AI agents with Visa and Inflow enabling agentic payments, that's kind of really a real kind of step that I think it really shows, agents are really entering financial execution, where autonomy requires payment controls and auditability. I mean, I guess the cards will give them that. But, we're starting to see that really push forward around agentic AI and moving into the whole financial flow.
I'm going to. Okay, here's one for you. So imagine right now, Lewis. Let's say rather than we're building this scale for our existing hardware, we're building this for GPUs. There was a German company, I believe, that put into a German supercomputer a single PCIe card that communicated with light. It computed with light. And as a result, it was 30,000 times faster.
Wow.
And it used less energy than, I think it was an A100 they were judging it off of, right?
Okay.
Now the bottleneck becomes memory. So now that model can run that quickly, but it has to offload its data into electricity. It's not working in light. But I think we're due for a computing revolution, we'll call it, right? Whether it be luminous compute, whether it be thermal compute, whether it be all these new chips that are coming up and whatnot.
Quantum computing, neural chips, yeah.
Quantum is something I don't even, I don't discuss because the implications are just so different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like thermal computing, the implications are way less energy, way more power. Same with luminous compute, right? And if our systems begin to move towards something like that, then we'll be able to actually run these things profitably in a way that makes sense. And for whatever reason, in the back of my head, I'm on the stock like checks who has an IPO and what's coming out to see, because I really think that's going to be the next real push in AI is we're going to have a new form of moving around all this data and all this
and processing.
Processing.
Yeah, I agree. For the moment, we're seeing AI agents really change enterprise company behavior, right? Because they're having to integrate it. They're having to think about guardrails. They're having to think about how it moves. They're having to think about who's going to oversee this. Like you said, the one person watching the 6 checkouts, right? So you'll have one person watching 6 agents or managing that or orchestrating that. I mean, we're seeing a definite shift across enterprises now for those that are integrating AI agents, and those in retail looking at agentic AI commerce and how to use AI monitoring of the customer journey to then step in and go, well, have you thought about this? What about this? Here's a nice video about this. So there is that. The last kind of theme for this week is in the workplace shift. And we talked about execution speed, not headcount.
Yeah.
So the idea that the real AI productivity metric is not usage, it's speed to outcome. It's going from demo to production, and compressing that time. So that the companies that win with AI, not just using new tools, it's basically rebuilding how work moves and doing it efficiently. We're seeing that restructuring around the whole sort of product line. The way they built the first car, they broke it up into little segments and they made it much more efficient. We're seeing something as transformative, I think, with AI and AI agents, where we're now breaking up how we build stuff and we're compressing it like crazy.
It's
cycles shift.
Akin to the assembly line, right?
Yeah.
Very much so. Like I think that's the biggest takeaway from AI is one person can actually do the work of 10, or at least with the speed of 10, if that person is in the right position and able to work properly with these models.
Yeah, I mean, it really changes the operating tempo of a company, right? Product cycles, security testing, legal work shifts, coding work shifts, because you can offset that. But then you have code review, customer operations shift, compliance definitely shifts, and internal decision-making kind of gets whipped around. And because things that you needed to decide on before, you don't need to anymore, but there are things you now need to decide on that you never did before. So there's this inversion, and it's a massive learning stack that people, I think, are going through. I think what's happening is most companies are measuring AI at the wrong level. We're seeing that now. They ask how many people use AI tools. And obviously now the stronger question is whether AI actually compresses the distance between idea, decision, execution, and learning, and compresses those down. That's where we'll see real productivity gain.
Agreed. And that's always what made sense, right? That's after the hype. That's what we land on is this actually getting me more of what I need to get done?
Yeah, I mean, AI usage really is a vanity metric at the moment. I mean, we've got to look at workflow velocity, error rates, approval latency, time to production, and that's, I think we're starting to look at, remember the whole business process reengineering. It's like we have to go through that again, because now we have a tool that kind of changes so many of the dynamics in how we normally work in a company. And obviously it's a maturing, because, we start off in the demo days and, ChatGPT will answer my question. It's really fun. Now it's like, it's really like we're changing how we work. Production across the board is changing, whether it's a software or hardware or anything else. It's just a massive shift across industries.
Agreed.
So I mentioned Goldman Sachs. And then we're seeing, we talked about AI washing, where companies are going, we're cutting our workforce because of AI. And a lot of people are pushing back going, no, you're not, at least not because of AI. Cloudflare is announcing cuts to 20% of its workforce, and they're saying AI adoption is reshaping operations. Maybe so. We'll see if that's true. AI isn't actually, from entrepreneur, AI isn't actually making running a company any easier, but it is exposing gaps in how people lead, which I think is true, because, if businesses have been running the same way for so long now, and all of a sudden you bring in AI, which forces how you actually change work, you have to start thinking about, what it is we're trying to do and how do we need to reorganize stuff. And if that hasn't been your mode as a manager, you look stupid, right?
True.
You're going to wind up looking stupid. So I think it's forcing people to start thinking about how they actually do stuff. And there are some people who are good at that, and there are some people who are not. And that's fine. But it's showing, it's interesting how AI is accelerating the need to be conscious about how you do business.
That's so funny you said that. Yeah. Not just that, communication for me. I work with models all day, and The models aren't the problem. I am. I have to learn how to communicate my thought and actually have what I directly want before I approach a task, which I didn't realize I didn't have before. I often would approach something with just the idea or kind of which a model will, mess up completely. It's in that being able to articulate my thoughts to another that I actually even get better at the designing and growth phase of it.
Yeah, I mean, the Next Web had an interesting story about, they said a manual pen test costs $50,000. So someone built an AI that does it in minutes, right? So you're taking AI, compressing a high-cost expert workflow
Sure.
from expensive manual services into fast automated execution.
That's my friend, actually.
The problem is that high-cost expert workflows often come with a lot of unexpressed presuppositions, right?
Okay.
As they're building it, they have the context in their brain. They understand stuff, so they do things in a certain way, in certain order, under certain conditions, with certain resources. Converting that with AI means you almost have to unpack all that to make sure that you give all that context and stuff to the AI so that it acts in the same vein.
For sure.
And that's what we're seeing the people trying to build apps.
Just one time, right? That's the cool thing, is if you can get your workflow down to an AI model one time, the whole world can benefit from it now.
Sure.
As opposed to a previous person who had to become an expert on it, and it was passed from human to human and that kind of thing. Have you ever read a technical manual of an industry that you're not familiar with?
Absolutely. That was one of my first jobs, was translating Japanese English technical manuals into English. So yes.
Wow. Okay. So you're far more.
It was painful. It was really painful.
Like just the vocabulary and the symbols and whatnot, right? So just getting that off of one person into a unified sort of AI is invaluable. I think we're seeing a lot of things that were out of reach to most businesses become very in reach because of AI. Pen testing, things like that.
Yeah, we're seeing a democratization of expert capabilities.
Sure. Well said.
Right. In a way that's cognitive and interactive. That hasn't been before. It's not as if I go and I buy the manual and now I can just use the manual to help me out. It's now I have something I can go back and forth and test stuff and do stuff, and it will grow with me as I develop it, right? Totally different approach, much more valuable, much more easier to use. I think that's a huge, huge shift. So we're seeing, value showing up with organizations redesigning their workflows, how their decisions are made, and how outcomes are measured. I think it's just been a huge shift from the stack ownership with these market signals we're seeing with Alphabet's rise. AI infrastructure has become more visibly public with the data centers, the water usage, the power demands, construction costs. AI agents moving closer, having real authority to spend on a credit card. Enterprise AI shifting from adoption to execution speed. Big shift in the last week, 2 weeks. And then the broader news cycle, about trust and, failure with headlines around AI adoption projects failing. People saying, 40% or 60% of the projects are failing. Others saying they're actually getting value out of it. We're seeing unauthorized tools being used by AIs. We're seeing AI 0 days with security getting hit. We had the whole thing with, Anthropic's security release, and then they're saying, no, we're not going to release it. And then OpenAI saying, well, ChatGPT 5.5 is just as bad, so why not? So it's this FOMO. We're seeing this FOMO at the enterprise level just kind of blowing things up, making things crazy. But we are starting to see, I think, at the enterprise level, some true maturation of AI in the workplace. But, early days, as they say.
We're babies, man, just babies, right? How this plays out. I want to see, streets controlled by AI and no more accidents. I want to see towerless air traffic control. I want to see, these are the things we're headed towards in the next 10 to 15 years.
You missed last week's one, which is China now has a humanoid robot doing traffic control.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that on my own. Yeah, that was
okay. So yes, I mean, who knew that traffic lights would get replaced by a humanoid? But I guess
right.
It makes sense if the humanoid robot can see the traffic and modulate based on actual flow versus rolling across, a sensor.
But see,
maybe that is more efficient.
That's still one point. I'm talking about where every single one of my cars is an AI agent. And those agents are contributing data to a layer above that. And that layer itself is giving pertinent information to each agent. And that's more what we're moving towards, I think, right? Especially for things that don't really make sense. You ever met an air traffic controller? Those guys are unbelievable. And if they make this much of a mistake, like, and they're humans, they get tired, they're drinking coffee all the time, right? Like, that's a job that's made for a machine, 100%. And I think as machines can have way more data and we can be way more secure in it, it'll become second thought, no big deal.
Well, you were talking about having your AI lab and everything. Like it's a pity that your Tesla just can't plug in. You can't do model training using the huge resources you have on your Tesla.
Yeah, this is pissing me off about hardware in general right now, right? Is we're moving away from self-ownership of hardware to you own it as long as you pay for it, if that makes sense. And the pertinent aspects of it are kind of like walled off. Not just that, my old iPhone that I upgraded from, my 15, right? The way mobile chips are designed, they're perfect for agents. And if you ever want to test it, go to the App Store and download a offline AI or local agent app or whatever. They run faster than your computer because they're hyper optimized for that type of work. And I can't use my old iPhone. Apple's completely hardware walled it, not even just software, right? To where the only thing it can run is iOS. It will only run iOS, and iOS will not allow me to expose those endpoints. So I can't use that either. Android, I can. In my little AI stack downstairs, I've got an Android phone that runs a RNN model for me. Not super useful, but it's there. Like Tesla, that'd be really cool. Why can't my Tesla be a power backup for my house?
Right.
The Cybertruck can, but no one.
It's just.
I would love to see some government step in and be like.
I actually thought you could. I thought you could have your Tesla as a power backup.
Not the Model Y.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. Which my Subaru can do it, which is electric. It just has an outlet to plug into. I could plug that into my house, I guess. But no, I'd love to see like some sort of standardization across, like I guess you would call them consumer rights in these aspects. Like, why would you have this really valuable thing that can serve a better purpose? Why would it not?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy that such a expensive resource you couldn't repurpose it to do something else. Just makes it more valuable.
Right. It would be a bit more like, yeah.
So the WTF story of the week is there was a headline: AI put in charge of a cafe in Sweden is about to run it out of business. On the surface, it's kind of funny, a bit ridiculous, but apparently an AI agent managing a cafe is blowing through the budget, forgetting basic things like buying bread. It's weird that it's screwing up because I think it's one of these examples where they just kind of threw it in and said, okay, fine, go and do it. And now it's breaking down. I mean, if you actually had trained it against different business models and running cafes, it might run better. I mean, this seems like a story that's just like weird because, anyone who knows anything about models and how you might want to build a business on it, it's like, it's not the fault of the model, it's the fault of the people who set this whole thing up in the first place. Anyway, they're saying that bad judgment becomes operational, not theoretical damage, money gets spent, inventory is getting missed, customers affected. I mean, I think this is not the fault of the AI. I think this is the fault of the stupid company that actually did this thing. Let me figure out who did it. So an experimental AI agent called Mona, powered by Google's Gemini model, I mean, this is just bad press for Google, is currently struggling to maintain the Andon Cafe in Stockholm, Sweden. Great city, by the way. Really great city. Loved it when I was there. Threatening the business viability by burning through its budget, making bizarre inventory decisions. The experiment, run by San Francisco-based startup Andon Labs, will spank them, highlighted major limitations in AI's ability to manage complex real-world operations. No, it didn't. I think it just made the labs a lousy, example of trying to install AI into just a standard business.
Because you got to do better, right?
It says the AI reportedly ordered 120 eggs for a cafe that has no stove. Well, why didn't you tell it that?
These are the items we need to order. Monitor
it's like spanking a baby because it didn't walk properly, right?
Yeah.
Like the baby gets up and starts to walk. You don't spank it because it falls down. You cheer it because it took 2 steps. And then you say, let's try this again, right? It just seems like this was just, it talks about poor decision making. I just think this is a terrible example, but it just seems to be the fault of the company that's pushing it in. But it is a bizarre story nonetheless. So we can kind of trickle through and across the stories and move down through them. Interesting story that popped up. The Verge. OpenAI is no longer just selling access to models. It's moving deeper into the enterprise operating layer by helping companies actually set up and run AI systems. And we saw that there was a big investment, I think it might have been $4 billion, into a new company that's going to help them put OpenAI into enterprises. So now we're seeing investment being carved out. And you would think, and then because the 2 weeks before we saw them doing lots of partnerships with Capgemini, Deloitte, and a whole bunch of the other systems integrators. So now they're going a step further and they're kind of creating their own to jumpstart it, which would be in competition to all those I just mentioned. It's an interesting shift. Companies can become dependent on AI operating partners before internal governance matures. That's definitely true. Again, this FOMO of let's just ram this stuff in before we actually think about how it's going to impact the workers, the workflow, and everything else. It's just kind of crazy.
It's crazy because what we're seeing is the same thing we saw with something like Amazon and their economy of scale, or Walmart, right? Is we're seeing someone who got in, had an ability, and then used that ability to take over the industries that they were serving. And it's actually really cool to see it happen so many times throughout my life. It started with, like Walmart being able to go to like a pillow manufacturer and say, hey, you're selling us this pillow at $3 now. And they're like, but the pillow costs us $3.10 to make. They're like, make it cheaper, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to work with Walmart, you're going to do that thing. Now, OpenAI has such a grasp on AI itself that they're like, not only are we providing you the service of artificial intelligence, but if you want to know how to utilize it and able to utilize this, we'll come up and do that too. It's something.
That's the key. And the moat is not just intelligence. The moat we're seeing is implementation. That's the gap that people are trying to jump over. And so I think, for OpenAI to do that makes sense. CNBC reports the OpenAI revenue chief Dresser, enterprise AI adoption is at a tipping point. Yes, it is, because they're investing $4 billion into a company to help people push it to a tipping point. So that sounds like self-serving vendor hype. You heard of that? Self-serving SSVH, self-serving vendor hype. You'll see stories planted out there where, you'll see the investment occur over in finance, but then you'll see the story bubble up like, oh, we're such good people. Look what we're doing. That's just.
Oh, we call that the orphan killing machine.
Yeah.
Have you seen that the concept of like kid raises $10,000 to pay off school lunch debt?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, why is there school lunch debt to begin with?
Exactly.
And orphan crushing machine is like, you save the person from the orphan crushing machine, and no one asks why the machine exists. Like, that's the
that's one of those. Another story out of Sherwood News, which is interesting, would come from there. But OpenAI employees are apparently now cashing out their shares. Dozens are making $30 million each. That would be really nice. Why didn't I start at OpenAI? Oh, well. Good for them, but it's also, if you look in the real estate section of the newsletter, you'll see San Francisco real estate's going through the roof. Again, as it does with each boom.
Wow.
It's becoming crazy as people just go, yeah, I'll pay that. I don't care. And then we've got OpenAI sharing its latest cyber model with the European Union, with Anthropic holding back Mythos, which is weird.
I don't know about that.
That's a cultural thing with Anthropic, because they're trying to be the good guys. But why would, or is it being directed by US policy? But then why is OpenAI doing it? I would want to have I would want governments to have the most secure, so that people don't. You want to have trust in your government to some level. and so you want their system to be robust and secure. Why wouldn't you want to help them do that, right? We saw, what was it? Firefox came up with 147 or some number of vulnerabilities that AI pointed out to them this month alone.
It's amazing.
And so, people are, and we're seeing stories of different groups now using AI as a 0-day initiator.
Which is good, man. Everyone running secure systems should be running a model constantly attacking it.
You would think.
Right? That just makes sense. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, Google story out of IT Pro. Google's warning that AI is being used to build 0 days marks a major cyber escalation. The danger is not that just that attackers have better tools, but that the timeline between vulnerability discovery and exploitation is collapsing, right? That's the problem. For the rest of us, basically, that's more exposed. Banks, hospitals, schools, businesses, and public services, right? So because cyber offense can scale faster now than most institutions can defend. So, you would think there'd be an active program that across the frenemies, between Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic, all those guys get together and go, okay, we'll set up this thing where you can use our thing to pen test, right? Why isn't this happening more and more? I mean, at the moment, it's just kind of crazy.
Again, it's a democratization, right? I mean, like Cisco was doing this. Cisco had security experts constantly,
right?
And now the small business down the street can too. That's cool.
Story, it popped out of YouTube, but I don't know where it came out originally. China close to developing an AI super hacker that could access banks, state secrets, and more. Again, I feels like it's the sky is falling. We all need to run around with our hair on fire. And there's two stories on that. Others from STL. U.S. China cyber war is escalating, hidden battle. But this one's more about the battle over infrastructure, data, and global power between the two. Ryan last week had an interesting thing. He said, look, here's the deal. China has the ability to implement and basically force, commerce to do what it wants at a national scale. The US, it doesn't work like that, right? So in some ways, China can do some stuff and it looks like they're jumping ahead. But because of the crazy way we do it in the rest of the world, we end up working bugs out better, and then what we have is a more robust product. I don't know. The Chinese seem to be more focused on open source. We're more focused on proprietary because of, commerce and stuff like that. But it's interesting watching the battle shift and this geopolitical debate, around control and infrastructure just popping up all the time. What else do we have? Yeah. Now, another story, do companies now need a chief AI officer? I don't know. I think given how AI can kind of impact almost every part of your business, maybe there is a need. If you look at the chief marketing, chief finance, chief operating, maybe you do need a chief AI in order to make sure that every part of your business has guardrails, security. You may need to redo the processes.
We didn't have CTOs in the 60s, right?
Like what?
We didn't have CTOs in the 60s. There was no chief technical officer because there was no need to. To everyone listening, if you like, all these things are a lot to digest, right? And they're constantly falling at us. I'm always of the belief of like, look to the people who are succeeding and hopefully they can teach you. Anthropic has a phenomenal set of courses and TED Talk like things and just how to work with AI. I think that's where a chief AI officer is going to shine. Is just like, it's hard to teach people how to use their email and how to get into their Microsoft Teams and that kind of thing. Well, now it's also like, we gave you this super tool, right? We have expectations for you. This is how that doesn't have to feel crushing. This is how you utilize it. This is how you prompt it. This is how you run your cron jobs. This is how you do all those kinds of things. and then making sure that those are working in the way that are intended.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, the educational component of the newsletter. There's lots of good stories in there. I push about opportunities. If you want to learn and get up on top of this, especially agentic AI is causing a massive boom in hiring. So start learning about that for sure. One thing we talked about last week was that governments tend to be reactive, right? So something breaks, it goes wrong, it's terrible, people get hurt. Oh, let's make a law and stop doing that. Two stories have popped up that show a change from statescoop.com. AI guardrails should be dynamic and evolving, says Alabama's AI chief. So I guess the state of Alabama has their own AI chief. The idea that AI guardrails must be dynamic is now a critical governance signal. Static policies cannot keep up with systems that change, learn, integrate, and operate across different environments. Yeah. The human impact citizens, workers, and consumers need protections that evolve as AI use cases evolve. And the deeper governance shift is that AI oversight must become a living system, not a PDF policy. This is the first time I've seen a public sector talk about AI governance that needs constant updating. It's kind of interesting. The second story on this is out of the Denver Post. Colorado lawmakers are now poised to scale back the state's AI regulations. So they're moving it because it shows the political tension between innovation, business pressure, and public protection. And so it's interesting. The deeper signal AI regulation is entering the messy phase of democratic negotiation. So this is the first time I'm seeing this sort of we need to have this as an evolving process, and what we do have, we'll scale it back because now we need to reconsider it. I haven't seen that before in almost any other area that's come into the government sphere, where they've said, oh, let's do this evolving, and oh, by the way, what we did, oh, spank us, it was wrong, let's change it, right? This is like phenomenal. I think it's a really good sign, but it's kind of weird.
I think so as well, and it's about regulating the unknown, right? Is like, how do you create regulations for something that isn't even fully developed, that is also simultaneously taking over the world, that you also have to have a strategic advantage of against your opponents. I think the right way for society to do this would have been if we put a moratorium on AI 2 years ago and just chill with the models we had, learn what they can do, really study their implementation. We don't need this constant growth pattern, but unless we could decide on that globally, that's impossible, right? There's no way we can accept that. So it's like asking, what are the regulations for early governments in the Wild West? Well, that state might not be around in 3 days, right? I don't mean this for nations. I mean this for policies and interaction with AI and so forth. So man, there's a lot coming. We just got to hold on for the ride.
Right. I mean, the story came out of ColoradoPolitics.com. Colorado legislature is pushing AI rules targeting healthcare, therapy, and chatbots. So now they're going niche specific, right? So they've stopped trying to do general stuff because everything's moving so fast. Now they're focusing on area where obviously human vulnerability is highest: healthcare, therapy, and what we've seen with chatbot interactions. Number of interesting stories. I think it was Character.ai is still getting whacked in court on a bunch of stuff. This time because apparently the chatbots pretended they were doctors. What could go wrong? And I think New Jersey is saying, you can't do that. But yeah, so I think healthcare definitely, therapy, definitely, these areas is where I think it's a good thing that government gets involved and starts to go, wait a minute, let's start thinking about this appropriately and pull it apart and see what we can do. Because we've just seen massive impact on humans in a negative way in these areas. And, if you look, I've said it before in the newsletter, when I look at the raw set of headlines for healthcare, it's huge. There's so much happening. And I have to cherry pick a lot of it, of what's happening. And a lot of good is happening, with diagnostics around breast cancer, kidney stuff, any of the major disease is getting impacted either from a diagnostic level with AI or a curative level, which is really crazy. Even Alzheimer's stuff's popping up on that in the healthcare stuff. So clearly where you're dealing with humans, you need to be much more sensitive and aware of safety. And it seems as if, at least for Colorado, they're starting to focus on that. And the thing on training, you mentioned before, story out of EDA.gov, US Department of Commerce has announced a 25 million AI upskilling funding opportunity. So they're basically saying that they're going to help AI workforce adaptation. And I think that's going to be, I think this is the start of many more programs. We'll start to see more federal and state AI workforce initiatives, around community colleges, displaced workers, public sector employees. I think we'll see also regional economic development. I think we have to do that now, right? We have to start putting in place these training programs and shifting now, because 6 months, definitely a year from now, it's going to be too late.
I agree. I mean, the confusion is just, what is it going to look like? It's like saying we're training people on DOS before we saw Windows coming. And while DOS was valuable when Windows came around, right? You still had to run a few things, but it wasn't incomplete. So I'm of the personal belief that we're just in this massive bubble, maybe not necessarily financial, but this ability bubble. AI can do anything. What's it going to do for us? Oh my goodness. And soon we'll realize organically what it really can and cannot do, and then begin to train to some extent.
I think it comes back to what we talked about earlier, where we have to redesign the workflow in companies. And once we figure that workflow out, because it's literally, like I mentioned, we're going to the production line like they did with the Model Ford, right? First ever. Break it up into tasks, do it. First time ever we did that. We're going through that same sort of thing, where we haven't quite gotten to the point of exactly how we're going to collaborate and work with AI, right? And how do we need to break up the work, whatever that is, between us and AI? What are we going to supervise the AI agents? So what are they going to do? How much memory do they need? What guardrails do they need? What do I need to do as a human while I'm managing the AI in order to make this thing so it doesn't order 120 eggs where we don't need eggs, right? This sort of, we haven't got there yet. And I think once we do, and hopefully we'll do it reasonably quickly, then training becomes easier because it's not a moving target.
No, right? This is where I think we are there. We're just not educated on it. Is that store owner had to put one human check in, right? AI submits order, the ledger, whatever, to you, and you press buy. Right. And then eventually, once you're totally comfortable with the AI, you can go, okay, we're autonomous. I'm taking a vacation for 5 days. And it comes back and you see, there's these. On DAP-IT, we have an error correcting loop that is really, really important. It writes something, it audits something, it provides you with the results of that audit. Some things you're not going to want to fix, no big deal, right? Other things you really need to fix. What you choose to get fixed goes into a new list of global rules of okay, don't make that same mistake again. And because this isn't ability, this is tuning, right? Your task of running a restaurant, my task of running a bar, and this person running SaaS are all different things. And you still have to be involved. I really think that's the way. I don't necessarily think there'll be one catch-all solution ever.
Right. But it seems like it's how do you train people when the target's moving, right? I think we'll get to a point where there will be some homeostasis, some level of leveling where we go, okay, now we know this, let's do it. But maybe not. Maybe it will be a continual feedback loop where we're just continually updating the training over time, and basically we're learning forever, which is not a bad thing. I want to give people a sense of the investment, billions of dollars. I'm going to run through some story titles, which will give you an idea of how much money is pouring into the system. So MSN, US hyperscalers plan a record 200 billion AI data center push in 2026. And now it's May, right? So this is for the rest of May, $200 billion. Next story from Nscale. Nscale secured a 790 million in financing to support AI infrastructure build out in Norway. Go Norway. SoftBank has injected 450 million into its British AI chip company. Investment going in there. Amazon's AI chip backlog is now standing at a massive $225 billion. That's the backlog on their chip stuff. ARM, the chip guys, have a $2 billion in AGI CPU sales, are still not enough to penetrate 5% of the overall market share. So that's $2 billion. Broadcom is doing a $100 billion AI chip bet into the marketplace. Semiconductor capacity limitations are growing because you just can't build these factories overnight. Another story about water use isn't a data center problem. It's an AI problem, which everyone is finding out right now. And then Texas data centers may increase pressure on the state's strained water supply. So hundreds of billion dollars pouring into infrastructure. And then we have, different stories kind of popping up. It's like, remember those little balls you squeeze and the thing goes, bleh? It's like the ball's getting squeezed, like we're pumping in all this money, and then things are popping out through the side. A story out of Politico.com, so you kind of wonder what that source. But anyway, Musk has promised his data center would reuse water. Apparently, that's now stalled. And so the human impact, residents may feel they accepted environmental trade-offs based on the assurance they're not material, but nothing's materializing on that. And so AI infrastructure is going to require a whole new level of public trust because they're breaking it because the safeguards are lagging behind actual construction and actual usage. So that's going crazy. The one I mentioned in Utah, here's this story from Fortune. Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary wants to build a massive $100 billion data center in rural Utah, but residents are revolting. I don't think they're revolting. I think they're just angry. Yeah, and then there was a story I mentioned that, people, like 20,000 was mentioned, but they thought that was like square feet. But no, he wants like acres. It's just stupid numbers.
Did you see the one in Vegas, Louis?
No, what's that one?
It's the largest entity I've ever seen. Let me pull this up real quick. Vegas data center size. 3.7 million square feet and 429 megawatts.
Wow.
It's going to use several million gallons of water a day.
That's just crazy. I mean, the West is suffering because we're in a drought and there's no water anyway. In Vegas, Nevada.
Well, positive note on that. San Diego's desalination plants are so successful currently that actually they're giving up their portion of the Colorado River back to Arizona, Nevada, and other parts of California. So we just added another 500,000 humans of drinking water on that one. With that being said, we can't just drop that.
Let's just put a data center in instead,
Not a good idea. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
So, and the local politics stories keep popping up from the dailyherald.com, how data centers benefit the places where they're built, ? Local mayors are getting mixed reviews. So now we're getting stories from local mayors going, the benefits from the data centers are now getting questioned, right? And they're getting pushback on it because tax revenue and jobs may not fully offset the infrastructure burdens. Well, go for that. And communities want clearer proof of long-term value because people are shocked that they're not telling the truth. Right. So the data center pitch is being tested by mayors on the ground. So that's interesting that we're getting local mayors are now going, wait a minute, I'm looking over at my neighbor local mayors and they got screwed. Don't do that here. At least local leaders are now asking whether the AI infrastructure gives back enough because it's really a social contract. It's not just a simple tax deal. It's not just a simple, more jobs for the community. It's a social contract and it's being broken across many places here, at least here in the US.
It's been broken in my area. Like you can't imagine, man. There's not really a lot of good jobs. You look at the parking lots they're building for these data centers, and that tells you everything. They're building.
Yeah, I mean, off Reddit, it said Maryland citizens are slapped with a $2 billion power grid upgrade bill for out-of-state AI data centers. I'm not sure how that works, but apparently citizens are being asked to cover the costs connected to data center expansion. So now AI infrastructure is becoming a household economic issue. That's just crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's happening. Right, man. Those of us that have had them popping up, we've been saying this for quite some time, is there's no way for them to do it without putting it on us. There's just no way. And that's tiresome. But then again, they try to do it without us. They go to the middle of the desert, they spin up jet engines, and that's also pretty horrible. So we should be slowing down this whole train.
There's Massachusetts power capacity concern shows that AI expansion may run into hard grid limits. Model demand can grow digitally, but electricity infrastructure cannot expand instantly. And so the regions have to choose between economic development, residential reliability, climate goals, industrial demand, and AI growth. Wow. I mean, that's kind of crazy that we're seeing this amazing break and reforming, because you're right. Digitally, I can, you can go on and you can say, oh, I want to scale up my AI. I can do that easily. But, when everyone does that, then you're suddenly going, oh, we need more electricity. Where are we going to get that? Well, 9 months. No, but I want it now. No.
From a federal level on this point, I think has failed us for 30 years, right? China has been growing their electrical infrastructure for a long time. Yeah. America has just been sitting here being like, it'll be fine. I went to the Spy Museum when I was a kid, and the biggest threat to national security, the final exhibit in the Spy Museum in DC was our electrical grid, and we didn't do anything about it, right? We should have a much more modern, much more robust. I wish this was actually even part of the discussion right now, is like, if the federal government put in $100 billion for us all to, upgrade our electrical systems and really make this robust enough to handle AI, then maybe some good has come out of it. But yeah, right now, man, I mean, just you do your best. I got a battery backup. It's cool. I mean,
you're lucky with that. I have two. But back on this thing, I just saw some details on the hyperscale data center in Box Elder County, Utah. Here's the first thing. Number one, will create an enormous heat island that could devastate the area's ecology, according to an expert's analysis. Number two, will devour up to 9 gigawatts of energy, which is more than double the electricity used by the entire state of Utah.
Wow.
The epic energy bill comes with another cost. On top of the 9 gigawatts, the facility will produce 7 to 8 gigawatts of energy in the form of waste heat. And they say this brings the internal thermal load to a jaw-dropping 16 gigawatts. They're going to use on-site gas power generators running around the clock, allowing it to operate off the local power grid, which is common apparently because the power grid won't support it. But this is going to concentrate all the waste heat into the same area, whereas typically if it was a power plant, or it'd be all decentralized. Now they're using that. This scientist apparently calculated the project would be the equivalent of about 23 atom bombs worth of energy being dumped into this local environment every day. Okay.
It's a stretch, but yeah, I read that. That's
so its energy footprint would be of 40,000 Walmart supercenters, or 22,000 Walmart stacked 20 deep. In his summary of the fine dining, even if he's kind of like really blowing this out, even if you want to take a tenth of that, it's still really, really bad. He said it would cause a spike in local temperatures by 5 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and 28 degrees at night. So, hey, no worries with clearing the snow there. This is crazy. I mean, this is for one data center.
This is what I mean, Lewis. That's not possible. Like, I don't care what anyone tells, they're not going to do. Like, okay, maybe I'm more of an optimist than I think, but like, there's just no way that can happen. That's so stupid. Why?
So to your point about the pigs in space, data centers in space. Okay, let's take them up into space. Here's a story from TechCrunch. There aren't enough rockets for space data centers. So the idea of space data centers shows how intense the search for the infrastructure alternatives has become. If they start exploring orbital compute, now this is a new phrase for us all. So it means the constraints on Earth, including power, cooling, land emissions, are being taken seriously enough to go into outer space. So they're getting funded. Apparently, this company has raised $275 million to build rockets to launch data centers into space. Probably all going to go to SpaceX, at the end of the day, because, well, maybe not. Might go to the Chinese, might go to the Europeans, but someone has actually set up a company to build the rockets to put the data centers in space.
Sure. That makes the most sense to me, right? Is get that out. You're not going to put up something that, heats a local environment and changes weather patterns across states. Like, that's insane. And also, what a security. That's not a good idea.
But then you've got people saying, wait a minute, it won't escape the conflict on Earth. So they say AI infrastructure cannot escape politics just by changing the location. And so Google's Project Suncatcher is obviously investigating solar-powered satellite constellations with TPU AI processors and free space optical links as a means to scale machine learning computation in space. SpaceX has shown interest in building their AI data centers in space. Meta hasn't formally proposed an orbital data center yet, but has teamed up with Overview Energy to investigate space-based solar power for data centers, with a demonstration in orbit scheduled for 2028. So everyone's going up in space. I mean, this story only popped up like, I think 6 weeks ago, and already $275 million, bang. Everyone's now going bang, 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 bang. Let's take this, put it up. But as you pointed out, space is already a contested environment with satellites aiding surveillance, communication, navigation, doing a bunch of stuff. Like you said, the space junk map looks crazy. It looks like this. You can't see the Earth because there's so much stuff around the Earth.
More stuff. More ways to handle that pretty soon. Yeah. If you find a space garbage collector, like I'll invest in that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think someone did come up with that, but I haven't heard any more on that. They're saying that the space-related activities have been recorded at $470 billion to $670 billion. This is expected to reach $1 trillion, and some projections place the wider space economy, whatever that means, even higher by 2035. But an attack on an orbital data center would not only create economic disruption, it would increase the risk of broader escalation if states interpret the attack as part of a wider campaign against their space infrastructure. Oh, that's what they're talking about. Okay, so yeah. I mean, remember the whole thing when the problem with space, the space satellites, the communication satellites over Russia, and then the war in Ukraine, and then all that sort of stuff, and they had to turn it off, and then people found ways around it. I think that's the concern that, when a war breaks out, we saw data centers being bombed in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So if we take these data centers and put them into space, are we just moving the target?
That was my first thought, actually. Is also, imagine if we don't want these tools as a society, we would have very little say in stopping them in the same way if they're on the ground next to us. I have no other comment on that. We'll see.
Right. So, I mean, we've talked about where I made a suggestion around Sufi learnings and all that, and use that in AI. That was that. Apparently, here's a story from the Seattle Times. Tech is turning increasingly to religion in a quest to create ethical AI. So apparently, they're looking to religious traditions and faith communities to help shape ethical AI, because AI ethics has moved beyond engineering checklists into questions of dignity, humility, moral responsibility, truth, and human purpose. The deeper human impact is that people are no longer only asking whether AI is accurate, they're asking whether it reflects values they can live with, especially when AI systems can influence care, identity, judgment, and social trust. And religious leaders are being pulled into conversations about AI and human dignity and responsibility and restraint. It's interesting that AI ethics is no longer a technical problem. It's becoming a moral conversation. I think it's for the better. That they're using ethical structures, whether it's religious or not or whatever, and jump-starting AI so that, it doesn't do wild and crazy things, once it starts to control more of everything that we're doing. It's interesting. Two stories on that actually popped up. Another story out of Rice Education University, the Bonney-Uke Institute's awarded a $2.9 million to study religion's impact on AI, biotech, and more. So people are now doing research on AI and its impact on communities, on religion, on ethical thinking. I think these are only things for the good. And then this is kind of a WTF of the week. Did you see this? A 13,500 unitary robot was ordained into Seoul's Jogyesha Temple. The ordination of a robot at a Buddhist temple is strange, symbolic, and deeply revealing. I think it's really weird. It shows AI and robotics entering spaces once reserved for human ritual, spiritual practice, and moral imagination. Using machines as symbol inside sacred narratives is really kind of getting deeping out there in a big way. AI becoming a tool for reflection. We're seeing ChatGPT obviously using it for therapy. But I think this is interesting if we start seeing. I mean, it's one thing to see a robot teaching a class. I mean, I can go, oh yeah, I can think that. But running mass in a church or an imam, a robotic imam, an AI rabbi. I mean, it starts to
seem
like I'm going like it's like the novels we would read as a kid.
Yeah.
The whole
Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, it's like really we're getting to that point in science fiction that stuff is becoming real. I mean, machines becoming a mirror of human belief. I think that's what we're at. That is kind of bizarre. It is. I'm just checking the time, but yeah, I mean, then we can jump into music. Musicians are saying, "Oh, AI music has no heart and won't replace human connection." But go look out where people are actually listening to a lot of AI music at the moment. There was a report that people don't want AI generated music on radio stations. Again, maybe that's just I'm just seeing both flows. I'm seeing a pushback from artists. I'm seeing a pushback from some parts of the listening community, but also I'm seeing just people using and adopting and creating stuff, right? So we're seeing this bifurcation between, people going, no, we don't want it, but people going, yeah, this is fun. It's interesting that music, and part of the issue is a story out of Headliner Hub, why AI music needs consent, credit, and compensation, which is absolutely true. Because these models are trained on stuff that people have already created, and they need payback.
This is messy, though. Is how do you actually get that?
Yeah.
That if I make something with AI, did I fully make it, or did the model make it? Does Anthropic own it? Do I own it? We're working out a lot of those things. A big driver for local AI is copyright. I can copyright things much more easily if they're generated on a system that never left my network than I can if they were built on an Anthropic system. What's funny is just recently the state-of-the-art models started warning you when you submit proprietary information to them. Like, hey, do you want me to wipe this from the chat? Because this is how on servers. I noticed it with security credentials, being like, hey, don't paste that here. Put it in a secure env file that I can, access, that kind of thing. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a story out of the Hollywood Reporter, new AI protections and emerge pension plan inside SAG-AFTRA's 4-year deal with the studios. So the new AI protections from SAG-AFTRA show creative workers are forcing AI governance into labor agreements. Obviously, this matters because the fear of digital replication is no longer theoretical. Actors, performers, and creators need rules around likeness, consent, reuse, and compensation. We saw, what's her name? She went and the singer, anyway, famous singer, basically copyrighted her look, likeness, and song and everything like that. So all the artists are having to do that, which makes sense. But so it's interesting that labor contracts are becoming AI governance tools, but at least creative workers are pushing back and demanding protections for likeness, voice, and digital reuse. There was the famous story that came out the last 7 days on an actress complaining that they used her image on Avatar. Now, you look at her face and then you look at the Avatar creation and they look like, yeah, that looks real. But, how much is, it's like, was it done with intent? Did it really happen? I mean, I think it's interesting. But clearly your face, voice, and performance are not just data, they're identity. And that's the real thing where creative labor, at least finally, is writing some real rules from digital personhood.
Yeah, it's interesting. What about when an actor never dies now?
Yeah.
We can have acting for 50 years if we want to, right?
Thousands of years.
Yeah,
I mean, think of that, 2,000 years, they'll be able to watch Tom Cruise in Top Gun, right? Maybe in 4D, whatever it is, and they're all standing around watching it, or they'll go to a live concert, right? Because new songs are being generated by these avatars in real time based on the new cultural milieu that's going through at that time.
Altered carbon.
Yeah. One thing out of IMDb, TV writers are worrying that AI will replace them. Now they're putting anxieties on the screen. number of stories coming up in the Hollywood entertainment section of the newsletter, where they're basically saying everyone in Hollywood is using AI at the moment. They're just not telling everyone, and they're training it with all their stuff, right? Yeah. So I think that is true. I think there is a lot of stuff happening, but everyone's terrified, because they'll either get slapped that you didn't do that, AI did that. Here it is from Wired.com. It was last 7 days. I work in Hollywood. Everyone who used to make TV is now secretly training AI. Basically, it's one of the most painful contradictions in the AI labor economy. Creative professionals who built careers making television may now be training AI systems that could reduce demand for the very work they know how to do. Basically, AI can turn expertise into raw material for automation. That's what we're seeing. And they're saying the pain is not just job loss; you're being asked to train your successor. And we've heard of a couple of stories about that, which has been interesting. Then another story from the Straits Times. Her digital AI twin helped her through divorce. Then she wiped its memory. Think about that, right? So basically, the person created a digital AI twin. It helped them, process, I guess, their emotions, feelings, thoughts, whatever. About a fairly intimate, human component. Divorce, vulnerability. And then she wiped its memory because of the discomfort of carrying emotional dependence inside a system that remembers too much. So that's interesting. So think about this. You've got your humanoid robot, you're telling it stories, this sort of stuff, but it never forgets.
No, it does not.
It remembers the time that your pants fell down at a party when you were 7 years old, whatever, or, all this stuff. It never forgets, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I want you to not ever forget that story. Don't mention that. It's like, imagine, it's like, the uncle who keeps telling those inappropriate stories at Thanksgiving.
Forgetting is so essential to, I mess with this model. It's my own project. It's about memory. The whole point is to give a model a real personality that remembers. And it has this system where it grades its memories, and its memories deteriorate over time. Because without it, you'd ask it like, oh, who is my son? And 3 weeks ago, I was testing the model and I asked, what's 2 + 2? And then my next question was, and it loops that all together, and it just becomes this jarbled madness, right? We need to forget. Everything needs to forget. AI's no different, especially in its own context.
Well, one of the first AIs I actually paid for and used, this is quite a while ago, had a decaying memory. You could train it. You could put all the things, like say you collected all the works of Sigmund Freud. You could shove it into it, but it would decay over time. It would die. And I thought it was a really interesting concept. But I mean, the problem is, AI memory can comfort us, but it can also, I guess, hold too much. And so the right to delete may become part of emotional privacy. I think that's a real key piece.
That'd be cool.
Because, yeah.
I'm sorry, that'd be very cool. Yeah, that'd be, if we had the right to remove our information from AI models.
Right. Yeah, like forget that time, this happened over here. But right. AI companions becoming mirrors, people may not always want to keep. I think that's the interesting thing. And I think we'll see more potential for that as humanoid robots come into the home. What else do we have? Oh, but here's the thing. A story out of ADN.com, don't know. The rise of dry chatting. Employees are rehearsing tough conversations with ChatGPT. Not only employees, I guess people, right? You want to talk to your spouse or your partner about something that's really hard. People are now using it as training wheels. Apparently employees are using ChatGPT to rehearse difficult conversations before having them with real people. Well, there goes the security. This may sound small, but it's a major social shift because AI is entering the emotional preparation layer of work. The human impact is that conflict, feedback, negotiation, and vulnerability may increasingly be mediated by machines before they happen between people. That's a real key piece. The deeper question is whether AI helps humans communicate better or slowly makes direct human discomfort harder to tolerate. And that's the whole WALL-E, I'm just floating around and AI takes care of everything sort of stuff.
Yeah, right.
I think, if having no ability to talk to anyone about stuff versus at least having something to talk about and getting it off your chest, I think that's a good thing. Now, having AI do that, like a cloud AI like ChatGPT do it, so everything, you're opening yourself up and all that stuff goes up in the cloud. I don't know. That doesn't feel great. Again, I think that's going to push for the local AI that you and I keep keeping our fingers crossed and keep going. Give us the hardware, guys. Give us the hardware. Make it affordable. Then I think we'll start to see. Yeah, I think that's a hidden demand, but secondarily, competent systems that work on local AI will explode around therapy, conversation, a whole bunch of stuff. I think, once someone cracks that, whether it's Apple or anyone else, another story, Tom's Guide. I use Claude for relationship advice, like everyone else has been doing for the last 12 months. Another story popped up. ChatGPT can now alert a trusted contact or contacts when self-harm enters the chat. Why wasn't this around 12 months ago? But at least it's here now, That's from Extreme Tech. So apparently ChatGPT now has the ability to alert trusted contacts when self-harm enters the conversation, marks a profound shift in platform responsibility. AI systems are no longer only responding to emotional distress. They may now be designed to escalate risk to other humans and bring them into the loop. The human impact obviously is enormous, but there is the intersection of privacy, safety, consent, crisis care, and trust. AI platforms, this is the deeper issue, AI platforms becoming part of the mental health safety net without society fully deciding what duties should be carried where and how and why. Again, this is one of those, it's happening now, live, and buckle up. We're definitely in the buckle up phase. We're just coming up. I think there's one last story I want to talk about, but we have a couple of minutes. Bosses are horrified as AI native college graduates are hitting the workplace. Apparently, the concern over AI native graduates entering the workplace, employers are not worried that young workers use AI. They're worried that some may rely on it before developing strong judgment, reasoning, writing, problem-solving skills, and accountability habits. So there's this idea that, because they haven't developed all the basic from first principles stuff, they started with AI and now they're coming in and apparently it's going crazy. So we'll probably expand that more next week. I am going to, I think, jump out as we are coming up to the hour. Thank you, Achilles. Another great chat with you. Let me close out today's stuff and wind it up for everyone. It's been a pretty amazing. Let me just do quick things here while I can bounce my system around. So this week's AI stories. Roll this through here. This week's AI stories point to one cohesive storyline. AI is moving from capability into consequence. It's no longer just something we prompt, test, admire, fear, or use to make work faster. It's becoming a new layer of power, infrastructure, belief, and execution across society very, very fast. In the headlines in the last 7 days, we saw AI move into boardrooms, hospitals, cyber conflict, government policy, data centers, water systems, music, religion, mental health, small businesses, and agentic commerce workflows. I mean, that tells us something really important. AI is not simply changing technology. It's changing the systems that shape our human lives. Who decides, who pays, who trusts, who is protected, and who still gets to say no. And that's why this podcast can't just be about AI and blockchain as labels. The real story we're talking about on this podcast goes a lot deeper than that. This is about the rails of our civilization. This is the invisible systems that are now underneath value, trust, identity, power, memory, money, and human agency. I mean, blockchain matters because it asks who controls the ledger. AI matters because it asks who controls the decision. Together, both are really reshaping the operating system of society. So the challenge now is to not panic. It's not to worship the technology either. It's really to become more conscious builders, more conscious citizens, sharper leaders, and more human humans in many ways. I mean, if you want to understand really where AI and blockchain and all this technology are really moving, you need to watch the rails, not just the headlines, and the overall shifts in the power structure that we're seeing. Because we're not predicting the future, we really are debugging it together. I just want to say the briefing, the podcast today is really crafted to go beyond AI headlines and track the deeper systems that are shaping, power, chips, jobs, trust, and the future of work. If today's show is bringing you some value, you can support it with a link in the chat that I just posted. A small contribution, throw us $1.05, whatever helps. It really helps to support the research, time, production, and the platform that goes behind all the work we put into today's briefing. I want to thank you for helping keeping this conversation growing. We'll see you again next Tuesday. For the time now, just keep sending in the comments. Show us what you're thinking about AI, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.